Okay, let's dive in then. Today, we're really focusing on something that feels fundamental coming out of this whole AI shift. It's the absolute necessity of leaders being right there at the forefront.
Right. So much of the conversation is about the tech itself, isn't it? Or maybe training the whole workforce. But when you look at the sources we've pulled together, articles, bits of research, our own notes, they all seem to circle back to this one critical idea. How leaders actually engage with AI, well, that seems to determine if the organization sinks or swims with it.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive really is to unpack why. Why isn't leader involvement just, nice to have? Why is it completely non-negotiable if you want AI adoption to actually work? And maybe more importantly, what are these sources telling us about the specific things leaders need to do, how they need to step up?
Okay, let's unpack that. One of the first things that really jumps out looking across the material is maybe a bit counterintuitive. The initial focus really needs to be on the leaders developing their own AI fluency first.
Huh. Okay, that's interesting. Because you usually hear about the big push to upskill, well, everyone, the entire company for AI. So why is it so critical for the leaders specifically to go first?
Well, they set the tone, don't they? It's about signaling. If the people at the top aren't showing they're willing to learn, to engage with AI themselves, why would anyone else really prioritize it? The sources are pretty clear. It's about leading by example. If you, as a leader, aren't, conversant or curious or actively digging into AI's potential and its challenges.
And you're basically sending a silent message
Yeah.
that this isn't really a top priority, despite what the memos say.
Precisely. And it's not just about understanding the tech in theory. It's about leaders really thinking through how AI fundamentally reshapes the business landscape, keeping an eye on industry-specific AI trends, and importantly, being willing to actually talk about the disruptive side of AI, the fact that it is a major change.
Right, which kind of leads naturally into the next big insight from these sources, doesn't it? It's not
Yeah.
enough to just learn about it privately. Leaders have to talk about AI, and they need to be pretty transparent.
Absolutely. What they say, what they do carries huge weight. One source, for example, highlighted a really compelling case at PwC. They held this big internal webinar. And the CEO didn't just give the standard corporate line on AI strategy. He actually shared his own personal story, how he was engaging with AI.
Oh, that's interesting. So a personal take, not just slides and bullet points.
Exactly that. And the reaction apparently really underscored the power of doing that, of being transparent. People talking in their internal channels afterwards, the feeling was, okay, this commitment is real. Because the CEO made it personal, shared the strategy openly. It signals authenticity. It kind of invites everyone else to lean in too.
Yeah, that makes total sense. When you see the person at the very top showing that level of personal investment and openness, it gives everyone else permission, maybe even motivation, to put their own energy into understanding AI and figuring out how to use it.
Right. It sort of nudges the workforce to think, okay, how can AI help me do more or do things differently? Because they understand this isn't just busy work. It's tied to driving different, hopefully better outcomes in this AI-powered future.
Okay, so we've got leaders needing to upskill themselves first and then communicating about it transparently. What else did the sources highlight about the scope of this? Is this just a job for the CIO or the strategy chief?
Yeah, the sources are really emphatic on this point. Absolutely not. This is not just an IT issue or a strategy issue. It demands engagement from leaders across every single function.
Every function. Wow. Okay. That feels like a big deal.
It is, because let's be honest, can you think of a single workflow in any part of a business that AI isn't likely to impact or enhance or maybe completely change? Probably not. So if AI's potential impact is that widespread, that pervasive, then the leadership engagement has to mirror that. You can't just silo it. That fundamentally misunderstands the nature of this change.
Okay, so leader upskilling, transparent talk, and involvement across the entire leadership team because AI touches everything. Does all this sort of tie together into one main principle that emerges from the sources?
It really does, yeah. Across the different pieces we looked at, the research, the articles, there's a very consistent thread. There's research by Kevin Brick, for instance, which strongly backs this up. The findings basically show that without really clear, visible leadership from the top, any AI adoption efforts tend to stall out or they just stay superficial, skin deep.
So the hard data, the research, it lines up with the anecdotes like the PwC one and the strategic thinking.
Completely. It just underscores that for companies to really benefit from AI, you need that push from the very top. It's not something you can just delegate down the chain or, hope it bubbles up organically if the leadership isn't visibly all in.
And I remember seeing one specific quote from that research you mentioned. It really nails this whole discussion, doesn't it?
It really does. Kevin Brake's work sums it up
Mhm.
very concisely, very powerfully. Leaders need to lead the AI charge.
Leaders need to lead the AI charge.
Yeah, that really does capture the core takeaway from this whole stack of material, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Comes back to that personal investment in learning first, the absolute necessity of being open about the vision and the disruption, and making sure that leadership engagement is broad, it's pervasive right across the organization.
Exactly. It's about creating that environment, starting at the top, where everyone feels not just permitted, but encouraged. Where they see the clear signal that getting to grips with AI is just essential for where things are going. So let's just quickly recap the key insights from our deep dive today.
Mm.
The sources we looked at argue really compellingly that leaders absolutely have to prioritize their own AI upskilling first. That's the crucial example for everyone else. And their transparency, being willing to talk openly about AI, even the disruptive parts, plus their active involvement across all departments. Well, that's critical for success.
And remember, how leaders talk, what they actually do, it truly matters. That PwC example, the CEO's personal story making the commitment feel real, that shows it perfectly. It all just reinforces what the research, like Breaks, tells us, and it's all captured in that line. Leaders need to lead the AI charge.
It really does crystallize it. Okay, so here's a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on as you process all this. We know AI is fundamentally changing pretty much every single workflow inside our organizations. So if the leaders aren't genuinely embracing it, if they aren't actively out front leading the way, how can they possibly expect their teams to figure out how to navigate this new complex world effectively? What specific concrete steps can you and the leaders you work with take starting today to really embody that idea, to actually lead the AI charge?